Father Michael Lapsley was born in New Zealand in 1949 and trained as a priest in Australia. He became a member of the religious order, the Society of the Sacred Mission. It was on the orders of the SASM that he ended up in South Africa and not Japan, where he wanted to go. It helped that he was aware of South Africa as a country. His first experience of the country was when the apartheid government refused Maori members to be part of the New Zealand rugby tour to South Africa.
But then my next introduction to South Africa was reading Trevor Huddleston's Naught for Your Comfort about the forced removals of Sophiatown. So I knew that there was something happening in South Africa from a very young age that was contrary to the Christian gospel. But I never imagined that my own life was going to become intertwined with the journey of the people of South Africa.
He arrived in South Africa and found the situation bad. His whiteness meant he automatically became part of the oppressors.
I often say that the day I arrived in South Africa, I stopped being a human being and became a white man, because suddenly every single aspect of my life, the suburb I lived in, the toilet I could use, the part of the sea I could swim in, the suburb I lived in, everything was decided by race. So in a way, I would say that apartheid robbed me of my humanity. It made me in an objective sense, part of the oppressor group. So for me to join the liberation struggle was to join the struggle to recover my own humanity in solidarity with black people who were struggling for their basic human rights.
In addition to his religious duties, Lapsley immersed himself in the freedom struggle, denouncing apartheid. The government took a dim view of his activities and they refused to renew his study permit, effectively expelling him from the country. He then moved to Lesotho, where he joined the ANC. He missed death in 1982 when the then SADF raided the ANC in that country and killed 42 ANC members and Lesotho citizens. At the time of the raid, he was visiting New Zealand. Later, he moved on to Zimbabwe, where he continued his ANC activities. Even here, the apartheid government followed him.
My participation in the liberation struggle had prepared me for the possibility of death. It had not prepared me for the possibility of permanent, major physical disability. I knew immediately when the bomb went off that the regime had got me. But also, in the midst of indescribable pain, I also had a sense that God was with me, present in that experience.
Father Lapsley says when he returned after 14 years of exile, he realized that South Africa was a damaged nation, damaged in its humanness, and all had a story to tell. And when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission began, he asked himself what was going to happen to the millions of people who would not have a platform to tell their stories.
What are they going to do with their stories? What will they do with the poison inside them as a consequence of the journey they've traveled? And I realized that we would never create a very nice society if we didn't deal with what we had in our hearts as a consequence of the nation's journey. And so I realized we needed to create what I call safe and sacred spaces where people could explore how the wider context has affected them and begin to detoxify. And that was what led me to conceive of what we call the healing of the memories.
Through the Institute for Healing of Memories, Father Lapsley has become a healer. The Institute has several chapters in South Africa, other African countries, and as far away as Cuba, Australia, and the United States. He insists that while he misses his hands and still struggles with everyday life, his disability has allowed him new things that he would otherwise never be able to achieve. Most importantly, people see him as someone who understands pain and suffering and therefore open up easily to him.
My disability is dramatic, it's visible. All human beings have a degree of disability and brokenness. And through these years, I found that often what people see of how I have suffered and lost gives them permission to be able to share the disability and brokenness, which is often invisible.
South Africa continues to experience numerous problems that are linked to its divided past. There are still traces of racism, the levels of crime and violence are high, and the country seems to struggle to forge a common future. Father Lapsley feels there is still a lot that needs to be done to heal the whole nation.
The very psyche of the nation is wounded. And I think in my experience, very many black people know that apartheid wounded them. I'm not sure how many of my white sisters and brothers have really faced up to the degree to which they are also wounded. Apartheid in its foundations goes back through the centuries. And we need to see that healing these wounds is part of our task as a nation, even for several generations to come.
Father Lapsley's memoir is Redeeming the Past, My Journey from Freedom Fighter to Healer. I am Joseph Mosia in Cape Town.